where you find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly, and the dreams that you dare to, oh why can't I? Oh, someday I wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where trouble melts like a lemon drops high above the chimney top. That's where somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, and the dreams that you dream of, dreams really do come true. Someday you wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where trouble melts like lemon drops high above the chimney top. That's where you find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly, and the dreams that you dare to, oh why.
When he's done speaking, we take it off. We wait until there's only 2 files there. Okay. When he's done speaking, we take it off. We wait until there's only two files there. Okay. take it off, and we wait until there's only 2 files there. Okay.
Before we begin, just a few quick announcements. First of all, if you could take the time to either silence or turn off your phones, would be appreciated. And our service today will conclude here after our service. And on your way out, the family has provided a to-go lunchbox for you. At this time, Terry Fan will be coming forward and he'll be leading our service.
Hello, everyone. My name's Terry, and Ray has been a dear friend of mine for many, many years, and he means a lot to myself and my family, and I'm sure he'd love seeing all his loved ones, his family and friends gather today to support each other, and to tell his stories. We'll hear from a lot of his loved ones about how Ray impacted our lives. And in so, hopefully we get a greater picture of the scope of Ray and the story of Ray. And what made him such a wonderful husband and father and loyal friend and determined colleague and overall overachiever in life. I speak for his wife Peggy and his children Cadence, Evan, and Ella, in thanking all of you for joining us today and helping to memorialize Ray. I just wanted to note there are scheduled speakers, but at the end of the service, time permitting, there may be an opportunity for those of you who want to say something about Ray that didn't have the opportunity to come up at the end. And I just wanted to introduce first his brother Owen, and maybe he'll give us a glimpse as to how it was to grow up with Ray.
Thank you all for being here to remember Ray and to celebrate the impact his life has had on all of us. I know that there are some that are unable to attend and I know their thoughts and well wishes are here even if they're unable to be here in person. Growing up with Ray, I was always struck by how hard he worked at everything he did. At first, it was like the small things, like working hard at those adventures you take as little boys. And he also made sure to work hard to include me, his younger brother, as we went out on our explorations and playing with our G.I. Joes out there. And it's possible that might have even had a little of an impact as a little child on went into his military phase, where he became overly interested in camo and tanks and jets and helicopters. And I think he perhaps worked a little too hard there. Or I bet my parents thought that when a 14-year-old Ray started to get phone calls from an Army recruiter. Thankfully, the Army didn't take Ray back then, and he started high school instead. He worked hard on his academics over in Stuyvesant High School, and he also expanded his interest there with swim and his wrestling team. And I'm going to claim some credit for the success he had there with the wrestling team, as I was that baby brother that he worked so hard to demonstrate all of those wrestling moves he learned. That hard work carried him through his undergraduate at Cornell, a master's degree from University of Delaware, perhaps at the urging of my father on that side, for the Chemie side, and for his MD from USC. And it was during that time where he was working hard at learning to be a doctor that he met Peggy. And somewhere between him leaving his empty coffee mugs everywhere as he studied, that Ray worked hard at being a husband and a father. Though I didn't get much to see Ray with his lab coat on his hard work on being a doctor, I was lucky enough to get glimpses into his work as he and Peggy built their family. I saw or appeared at some Christmases in Miami during a residency down there, and then some Christmases or Thanksgivings in California. It was there that I saw him across different vacations with family to hikes and working hard as he brought kids to swim and to Little League and to more swim. And I saw some of him reflected in his kids there as they learned of his dislike of clutter of the importance of sun protection. Sorry, Ray, I forgot to put on my sunscreen today. And even of those silly little things of putting the caps on back on every little bottle. But it was somewhere there that we got that horrible diagnosis of cancer, and it pained me to see some of those low points of the surgeries over the years and the treatment. And I don't know how they did it, and I don't know if I would have done it, but Ray definitely worked hard there too, with the support of his doctors, surgeons, medical team, and family. And I think it was thanks to there that we got many more years with Ray and got a chance to learn of him. And I am so very grateful for that. And Ray, thank you for everything you've done for me, for those around us, as I love you, and yeah, I miss you already.
Hi, I'm Graham Williams. I've been a friend of Ray for 35 years. Forgive me, I'm going to use an iPad because otherwise I would just burst into tears. Remember this: it does not matter how or why someone dies. Instead, what matters is your choice to remember. Forgive me for using an iPad, but I really need it. I hate cancer. But I'm glad I had the opportunity to see Ray a few times in the past couple of years, and absolutely thankful that we as old friends took that opportunity and put the work in to reinvigorate our childhood friendships. He was my first friend in high school. I cannot remember how or when we met. Those memories faded over the past 35 years. I do remember making epic long-distance phone calls from one borough of New York City to another, talking for hours and realizing I had met one of my people, and then getting in trouble when my parents got the long-distance bill. Our friendship could not have been scripted. We came from radically different backgrounds, yet found ourselves kindred spirits. I went to Brooklyn, darkest, deepest Brooklyn, well, Brooklyn Heights, really, for the first time in my life to visit Ray. He traveled to the Upper East Side of Manhattan to visit my family's home. Neither of us were brave enough or willing to spend the night in such foreign territory. You know, Graham, Ray explained one day, have you ever worn blue jeans? You might want to wear blue jeans. I really think it might help you out with the girls. There were no girls. I had grown up wearing khakis and sports coats or suits. Some might say we were two of the most awkward boys, but luckily Brandon and Vincent will come later. And I would just choose to remember instead honesty and forthright conversation. It was a little brutal at times, but it was honest. Thinking about it, these 35 years later, I remember Ray's almost unbearable, insufferable optimism. Oh, Vinny, you'll do fine. He'll get into a good school. Brandon's gonna be great. You'll do fine too, Graham. You'll study hard, you'll get good grades. I think that blend of optimism, single-minded focus, as Owen has said, and the dedication to work is called grit or something like that. And I know that Ray had grit for days, for 10 years even. And life's hard without that grit. Life spreads us apart. You know, we come together for celebrations like Peggy and Ray's marriage in June of 2001. And I remember I drove across country and I got to see them and visit with them. And then a few short months later, I was overseas for almost a decade, and they're having kids, and life spread us apart. You can find yourself almost out of touch and not know the people who were your closest friends so easily. Take some of that grit that you all have take some of that hard work, those memories, and put that into your friendships. Over the course of our friendship, especially in the last few years, Ray inspired me with a concept that's new to me, that I struggled to describe until I heard someone name it grace. It's easy to ignore a friend who drops off the earth for 6 to 9 months and then pops up randomly. But Ray always engaged with grace and with love. In texts and phone calls about raising kids, I took a lot of notes. I have a 4-year-old, much younger than Ray's children. And Ray would say, "Graham, she's 4 years old. Give it a minute." And he came to temper those hard edges that we had as little boys with that grace, and I seek to do that as well. Unfortunately, over the last 22 years, I've attended far too many memorials and celebrations of life for friends and colleagues. The events themselves become harder and harder to remember. But please listen. It doesn't matter how or why someone passes. Your memory of them is what matters. Keep your memories of our friend Ray with you. Listen to the stories of today and keep part of our friend Ray with you as you go forward. Brandon Del Pozo is next oldest friend. He's younger than Vincent and I. Will go next. Thank you.
I'm Brandon Del Pozo. I met Ray in the spring of 1988, 35 years ago. So I knew Ray before many people in this room. And at least for the moment, he's powerless to contest any of the stories I'm about to tell you. So I can give you the chance to understand Ray as we knew him back in high school before he was Dr. Chang. So I did meet him at a science fair. We were both accepted to Stuyvesant, and I was thrilled to meet someone else who I'd be going to Stuyvesant with. Ray's math scores were good enough to get into the honors biology class at Stuyvesant. The second you got there, they started sorting you by performance. So Ray went right to the top and went right into honors biology, started on his trajectory to become a physician. But if you remember the time, you heard Graham talk about the military. You heard his brother talk about the military. You're wondering what the hell was going on with that. Bear in mind, it was the 80s. For some weird reason, Ray and I and our friends had weirdly internalized losing the Vietnam War. And we had also thought that we had to prepare ourselves to fight the Soviets. And we were also scared. It was a scary time to be a young person with all of this going on. It was also a very violent city we were living in, and I think a lot of the things that Ray and I did were efforts to confront that fear and control it and make sense of it. So there wasn't only the studying and the science and the math, but a lot of youthful energy running around, doing things. Frankly, we brought a bag of air rifles on the New York City subway and the Long Island Railroad, and we'd be expelled from school and on the front page of the Post if we did that today. But then we went to the Hudson Highlands. We camped out overnight. Our parents trusted us just to disappear into the woods, none of them knowing the first thing about camping, us not knowing the first thing about camping. And there Ray was, huddling in the cold with us, trying to share his meager stores of body fat weren't very good at keeping anyone else warm, let alone him. But we would sleep in the woods at night thinking we were going to be soldiers and take the subways together, constantly alert, worrying about getting robbed. One day, Ray and I were going to, I think it was a wrestling dinner that he invited me to, and 2 guys surrounded us and told us we had to give up our gold chains. Ray didn't have a gold chain, and mine, I'm Jewish, was a chai, and the mugger didn't know what a chai was, so he decided not to steal it. But we spent the rest of the night sharpening chopsticks into spears in case we had to fight our way home. That was the kind of New York City that we lived in, that kind of made Ray who he was as a young man. So 2 more anecdotes about that. One is, in our military maneuvers, we had to just have an enemy, and we didn't have any enemies, so we picked one at random in a park in Staten Island because our friend said that he didn't like that guy, and we spent the night setting off, literally 1 in the morning, setting off fireworks in the back of that guy's house. didn't have a thing against him. My friend just said that that guy's son was a jerk. Reacting very sensibly, the man came out of his house with a bat and took a swing and actually connected with Ray. We all ran off, completely scared, went back to our friend's house. 20 minutes later, Ray came through the door holding his side, bruised, coughing up blood, saying, "It's fine, I'll be fine, just give me a minute." But that type of discipline where he just said, "It's fine, give me a minute, I'll deal with the pain," is the type of attitude he brought with him the rest of his life. It was the type of attitude that made him the citywide wrestling champ his senior year. I would envy him. He said when he heard that wrestling was 5 days a week, you couldn't miss a practice, it was gonna be hard, and most people weren't good enough, he said, "I'm joining the wrestling team." And then he would spend hours next to the radiator in the basement of the high school wearing sweatsuits to make weight, right? That was the type of focused guy he was that just set him up for the rest of his life. Two more quick stories. I had the privilege and the honor of going on Ray's first ever date in his life. Ray wasn't always, and I wasn't always, the suave, Rico Suave types that wooed wonderful women like my wife and Peggy. We went on a date with these two girls from Cardozo High School. We wore combat boots and fatigue pants on our first date. Thank God it was dark in the movie theater so we could minimize that. We thought, hey, listen, women like strength. We had a pretty good time, and then on the way back, transferring on the subway to go home at Queens Plaza, which has different levels, it started raining, but it wasn't rain. We looked up, a man was urinating on the stairs, and it was coming down on us. That was what New York City was like. That was our first date, and part of his journey to Peggy is wanting to send that girl a letter and putting like 1 and 2 cent stamps to make up the postage. And when he showed me an envelope with like 11 stamps on it, he said, "Do you think that the girl will find this weird?" I said, "I don't know, Ray. I think you should use regular, like 1 stamp." And he said, "No, I can't reuse these stamps and I'm not wasting the money." That cleared the deck for Peggy at that point. So that was an act of fate. One of the things I'd say is that, as I watched Ray through the rest of his life, and especially through the challenges at the end of his life, in one sense, the strength and the fortitude that enabled him to stay with his family and with his loved ones as long as he did was unfathomable. There are so many times I'd say I'd never have the strength and the discipline to struggle the way Ray did. And it was truly remarkable, and in my life recently, it's been an inspiration to me. But on the other hand, if you're encountering Ray as a friend or loved one, not from 35 years ago in New York City in the 80s, but more recently, the strength and the fortitude and the focus and the quirks that you saw in Ray were always there. They were always there. They were there from the earliest moment I saw him. They made him a very, very unique soul, and I'm going to miss him very dearly. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Eric Paulson, and first off, I'd say from the stories I've heard so far, I'm really struck by the similarities. I've known Ray for almost 15 years, the last 15 years, working alongside him in the head and neck surgery department at Kaiser. When he first joined us, our offices were right down the hall from each other. We were only 2 of 3 doctors there in that clinic, and we would often chat about interesting cases we had seen, our children's achievements like Proud Dads and our New York sports teams. I had learned that we actually both grew up not that far from each other in New York, and that he was an accomplished high school wrestler. Ray was one of the nicest and most soft-spoken guys that I'd ever met, so initially I was a little surprised about this interest of wrestling and fighting, but I would go on to learn that there was actually nothing surprising about that at all. For those first few years at Kaiser, he was the department workhorse, scheduling extra evening clinics whenever he was told patients needed to be seen. We were all in awe of his work ethic and dedication. Quite frankly, he kind of made us look bad because he worked so hard, but we were really in awe of his work ethic. One day I'd heard that he became ill while working in the operating room, and a few days later he came to me with some bad news. He would be out for a little while, he said, but I knew that he was a fighter and that he would be back doing what he did best, taking care of patients, and he assured us of that. And that's what he did. He mostly kept his health private, and we all respected that, but privately we did know that he was fighting a serious battle, and we were amazed at his strength and determination. Over the next decade, he continued to give outstanding care for his patients, take on complicated surgeries, and take sleepless overnight calls. He would tell us about the amazing trips he was now taking with his family. He took up photography and would share amazing photos of birds that he caught in mid-flight, stars and planets, the beauty of which many of us take for granted. He made sure to live each day as though it could be his last and created more memories in these years than many do in a whole lifetime. Seeing the photos of his adventures prompted many of us to also plan trips with our families, rather than waiting for that perfect time that always proves elusive and maybe never comes at all. Every once in a while, he would let us know that he had to go out for a little bit, but he would always return back to work in half the time we expected and resume his incredible work ethic. Almost 4 years ago, our lives in healthcare were turned upside down. The pandemic hit, and no longer were we doing routine elective surgeries, but we were seeing extremely ill patients in Army tents outside the hospital and performing tracheostomies in protective suits. And there was Ray right beside us while we privately wondered, is this really safe for him? But that's how Ray always was. He always made sure to care for his patients, his family, his friends, and his coworkers before worrying about himself. Almost 1 year into the pandemic and a few months after assuming the role of department chief, I heard my cell phone ring and I saw Ray's name pop up. I assumed this was about our recent discussion about him taking on the role of physician in charge of our Ontario clinic, but it wasn't. Ray told me he had some tests and it wasn't good. His doctor said it wasn't safe to continue seeing patients. He then started apologizing profusely that his concerning health issues would add stress to me as a new chief, and that he would not be able to help care for patients during the pandemic. He even said he considered going against his doctor's advice and continuing to help during the pandemic, but after much discussion decided he would sit out a bit and try to return when things quieted back down. I was devastated to hear the news. In that moment, hearing him still worry about my stress levels and well-being in the face of his own far more important battle really choked me up. After gathering myself together, I just said, Ray, what you've done is absolutely amazing, and there's nothing I want more than for you to take care of yourself. While I had known Ray was a fighter, I realized in that moment he was an absolute warrior. After putting my head down on my desk to absorb what he just told me, I suddenly had this thought of how he told me he wrestled in high school, and actually how bad I felt for anyone that actually had to go up against him in a match. Unfortunately, things did not quiet down anytime soon, and Ray's health did not get to the point that he could return as he hoped. We continued to check in on each other, grab lunch when there was a temporary lull in the pandemic, and shared the joy and fear of seeing our oldest daughters go off to college. I think the main part in having a successful and meaningful life is creating a positive impact in as many lives as possible. Not just a small impact with short-lived effects, but an impact that changes how people think and interact long after knowing you. By this definition, I would say Ray lived a wildly successful life. Besides all the patients that he provided great care to, he has shown all of us how to actually live and create timeless memories with friends and family. Most of all, he has shown us how to truly rise up when life presents enormous challenges and to never give up the fight. We will all miss Ray, and he will always be remembered as an outstanding physician, friend, and compassionate man. May he rest in peace. Thank you.
Hello there. My name is Daniel Lee. I'm one of Ray's friends. I've known him since 2009, since he joined Kaiser. I remember one time Ray and I was at the Ontario office where he was working out of, and we decided to go to lunch. And Ray was driving his brand new Prius. And I'd never been in a hybrid before, and I always thought it looked kind of small on the outside, but it was actually pretty spacious on the inside. And I remember it just had this gorgeous LED display, and just the numbers just popped showing all the car metrics. And we're on the 60 freeway, not a lot of traffic at all, and Ray was driving, and I just remember staring at the instrument panel, and there was this number that kept going 44, 45, 44, 45. And I go to Ray, I said, your car is amazing. You're getting 45 miles a gallon. That's incredible. And Ray paused, and he looked at me and goes, no, Dan, that's the speedometer. And if any of you ever been in a car with Ray driving, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He would get you from point A to B, but you weren't going to see point B anytime today or probably even tomorrow. Ray was rugged. I remember visiting him in the hospital right after his first surgery, and we were just chit-chatting. We never talked about his health or medical things, and we talked about fun things. And hearing the other stories from the prior speakers, it does explain his obsession with guns. And we talked about guns. We also loved watches, not quartz or digital, but old-fashioned, just analog watches. There's something about the precision, the machining, the accuracy. And his nurse came in, and she had to do the patient assessment and just checking all the tubes, wires, and hoses that he was connected to. And of course, she has to ask, how's your pain? What's your pain level? And he had just had surgery yesterday, the day before, and he said, I don't feel bad. And he didn't look bad. And what struck me is like, wow, this guy is tough. He's very strong. Ray was a big kid at heart. After he got discharged from the hospital, he was recovering at home. He called me and he said, hey, Dan, you want to go play Call of Duty? It was a video game. And of course, I said, yeah, let's play. It was a video game on the thing, it was a PlayStation 3, and we would log on and we would play. We were like two kids opening Christmas presents, and we would log in at 8 o'clock and play till 1 or 2 in the morning. And we did this every night for about a month straight, until he finally went back to work. I know it's kind of silly for two adults to be playing video games, but it was a way of hanging out, and it was a good break from reality. Ray and I, we both had this childish, pathologic obsession with firearms, and hearing his stories, I kind of understand why now. But so I promised him I would take him out to go shooting. So we went to this place called Hodge Road. It's off the 15 freeway, just south of Barstow, out in the middle of nowhere, desert. And that's the nice part. You can do what you want, and nobody's going to ask any questions. And it started off just with the two of us, and then eventually more friends came, and it kind of just became an event of its own. Of course, we had our guns, our ammo, our targets. Then we had drinks and tables and chairs and Easy Up. And Ray, he brought his infamous butane stove. That thing that would take probably an hour just to cook one burger, but it was nice. We'd spend time together, shoot, talk, not a care in the world. The funny part about Hodge is that you could bring what you want. You could probably bring a rocket launcher, nobody would say anything. And Ray was a really quirky guy. So he didn't bring a rocket launcher. He didn't bring a gun from Call of Duty. He brought a BB gun. I mean, he's probably the only person in the history of Hodge to bring a BB gun, and he loved that thing. It was this $1,500 carbon fiber barrel with a specialized gas system, and he brought it every time, and we used to call it the mouse fart gun, because you'd shoot it, and it's like little sound, and it wasn't much louder than a mouse fart. But he told me this really funny story. This was years ago, so some of the details might be a little bit off, but he told me that he had this I guess, a bird feeder in the backyard, and some mice or some kind of vermin were getting into it, and they kept eating all the food. I see him smiling now. I guess this, and that kind of pissed Ray off. He's like, the mice got to go. Any sane person would, you'd probably just call the exterminator, be done with it. Ray, he took it on himself. So he got some kind of motion sensor he set up around the bird feeder, and then the sensor would go off, something would chime in the house, he'd grab his air rifle and go pick off whatever was in the backyard. And I think he was, doing this in the middle of the night too, and you're nodding your head, yeah. And he would wake up Evan to do this as well. That is what legends are made of. That was Ray. This past November, December, he was pretty ill. Peggy sent us a text, and that was a little unusual because Ray was very private. I don't think he wanted us to see him in the hospital setting. That's just my guess. But she let us know, and most of us in the department, we went to go see him. And he did look awful. I mean, he was in and out of consciousness. His breathing was shallow, and we thought that was it, that he was done. That was back, like I said, about November, December last year. Weeks went by, we didn't hear anything, and then I think maybe a month and a half later, just out of the blue, on our little group text, somebody texted something, and we see a response from Ray. I mean, he was still with us, and he went home and he recovered yet again. I mean, he was just a resilient guy. And I remember I kind of rounded up all the troops, our little shooting group, and we picked the day. I think it was a Friday, and we just went to a local range, and we all got together. We hadn't seen each other in quite a long time. We hadn't seen Ray. He did not bring his BB gun, thank God. He brought real guns, and that was the last time I saw him. We had tried to get together for lunch back in June, and Ray was always apologetic. I remember he texted me, he said, "Hey, I can't make lunch, getting chemo." And I was like, chemo, more important. And then in mid-July, he sent me a text, and he said, "Hey, sorry, Dan, for out missing lunch. Things have been really crazy, just got out of the hospital, but we have to get together again sometime." And that was the last time I heard from him, because he passed away about a week after that. I was trying to find a phrase, a poem, lyrics, something that would sum up what Ray meant to me, what he accomplished, and I think I found it. It's kind of a silly source, but it comes from a movie delivered by one of the greatest actors of all time, Sylvester Stallone. Yes, Rocky. There are actually lines from the movie Rocky Balboa, which came out in 2006, not the original Rocky. And it goes something like this. Not you, me, or nobody will hit you as hard as life itself. It doesn't matter how hard you hit. What matters is how hard you get hit and you keep moving forward. How much can you take and keep moving forward? And that really summed him up. I mean, he continued to work, he went on vacations, he spent time with his family, with his friends, and he was just a juggernaut. He never gave up. So Ray, you've fought a long and arduous battle, but you don't have to fight anymore. You will always be loved and remembered by your friends and family. And there's always a special place for you in our hearts. And I hope that you finally found some peace.
Hi, everyone. I've known Ray for 24 years. We always talk about how we've known each other now for more than half our lives. We met in med school, 1999. And if everyone, we all became like brothers. There's a group of us from med school. We stuck together, watch each other get married and have kids and grow family and hang out. Just like the previous speakers, if you know Ray, there's a couple of things. Ray's a quirky guy, and he's interesting, unique in many ways. Like a lot of people said, he's a hard-working guy. He had love for, passion for learning, and he was very disciplined. One thing that sticks out to me is in med school, I remember he had this regimen where he said he was going to study at the library until, at least minimum 7 p.m. And that applied for every day, even right after we took our finals. I'm like, where are you going, Ray? I'm going to the library. We're like, we just got done taking our test, but he's very diligent, hardworking, like everyone said. He was very meticulous, and I think he's good thing he met Peggy, who was understanding of it. And everyone kind of who hung out with him knows this, the phrase micro splatter. He was also very adventurous. As people mentioned that he lived life to the fullest. He had many hobbies, many unique hobbies. I remember when we were living in med school together, he woke me up in the morning wanted me to try something. Later on, he told me it was rooster balls. He finally convinced me to, try it, and the kind gentleness of him, he wanted to warm it up because he thought it would taste better that way. And when he microwaved it, unfortunately or luckily for me, it blew up, so I didn't have to eat it. One thing you learned about Ray as you got to know his uniqueness is that, one, he's very brave and he was not afraid. Then you knew he had a kind, gentle heart. Over the years, when I saw him interacting with Peggy and his kids, I learned how loving he was and how he was kind. I mean, throughout those years that we all hung out, all the other fathers, believe you and us, we all broke down and we lost our shit and, got very angry or yelled at our kids or something. But I never ever really heard Ray yell or get angry. I mean, I remember once he got kind of upset, but this is how he said it. He said, "Evan, quit drinking sodas. They're not healthy for you." He was just a very kind heart. He and Peggy did a great job in raising the kids. I mean, we used to go on these yearly family medical school friend trips, and his kids were so loving and kind. Like, they would be playing randomly and just come one at a time, just randomly come up to Ray, give him a hug and a kiss. And it was just, there was a lot of love in Ray's family. I could see Ray's hard work and ethics and determination and cadence, especially when she does these endurance sports. I see Evan being a ladies' man, kind of like Ray. I know, someone shared about his quirky date and everything, but man, Ray was fearless in that, man. When we were in medical school, who'd have thought? He had the most active dating life out of all of us. We'd have gatherings at Ted's house, and he'd be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna bring some girls," and none of us believed it. Just letting you know, it was a bunch of sausage fest always, but Ray would always bring girls. And Ella, I see the adventurous side in you that has all the curiosity that Ray has and willingness to explore and learn. Recently, we went and had some cow intestines. I don't know, Ray just randomly texted us to say, "Hey, you guys want to eat some cow intestines?" I'm like, okay. And he said, "Yeah, my daughter Ella wants to try some," so we had some. Got some great pictures of the kids eating cow intestines and throwing it up. And this part of Ray, I think people kind of, reference his wrestling and everything. This part, it wasn't quite obvious until I kind of thought about it. And when I reflected back on Ray, he was a tough son of a bitch. You wouldn't think of that because he was such a gentle, kind, loving guy. It's not the first thing you meet, and you're like, he's not like big buff guy who's tatted up or who looks like a mean, tough guy. But man, he was one tough guy, Over the years when he was, battling cancer, he fought hard and courageously. You know, through the many surgeries he had, chemo, radiation, he never gave up. As, you know, my reference to Coach Jimmy V said, don't give up, don't ever give up. I mean, Ray was that. He never gave up. And another thing, as we gather with our friends, we talk, we say, man, do you ever remember Ray complaining or whining at all? He never did. I mean, man, that guy was in a crap load of pain. But he never, ever complained about that. All he would say is, I kind of have the runs, or I kind of vomited here and there, but I'm okay. He never complained about how much pain he was in, and I can't imagine how much pain he endured. Despite battling cancer and all the pain he was enduring, his oncologist, I remember, shared with us that he could go on disability, but as his colleagues mentioned, he was determined. He continued to work and be an awesome, surgeon that he was. He even went on a Mount Baldy hike with us while he was getting chemo, having the runs, having the stomach ache. Many of us wouldn't have done it, but here he is, the guy with cancer on chemo, going on a 7 to 8 hour hike with us. During the hike, he had to go to the bathroom. He threw up a few times, but he didn't really complain. He did it. He was probably 90%. We were just shy of the summit, but we were running out of daylight, so we had to turn back. But as determined as he was, he made his kids, Evan and Katie, I think, calculating the extra hours he needed. They went a little earlier, and he did it. That's how determined this guy was and how tough he was. This picture of him at Turks and Caicos, we were there with him. I remember all the fathers were putting their kids on that kayak and going out, and as weak and as frail as his body was from fighting cancer, he still put Ella on the kayak and we went out. Our other buddy, Terry, he's gonna come up. He's a big, muscular guy, and he couldn't handle it. But Ray, he handled it. He was resilient. I mean, I just want Ray, Peggy, and his family and his kids all know that, they fought hard. We're proud of you guys. They never gave up. He never gave up. I remember even seeing him on that Saturday, a couple of days before he passed, how tough he was. Wasn't complaining. He was eating ghost pepper chips. And we're gonna miss him, and I learned a lot from him. He was a great friend, great husband, great father. What a great man he was, great surgeon, and just a great person. He showed kindness through his kind, soft-spokenness, but showed his tenacity and toughness. He lived life with a full passion. We're gonna miss him a lot. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ted. I've been Ray's very close friend for many years. In fact, we know each other for probably most of our adult lives. Like John said, we all met in school about 20-something years ago. And at the time, when I met him, I never would have thought we would be such close friends. I mean, my first impression was, man, this guy's weird. I mean, he's such an eccentric guy. And for all of us that knew him very well, there are endless stories of unusual, irrational behavior. But it turns out he was just a really, really fun-loving guy. As I thought about Ray's life over the past few weeks, I recalled a lot of the fun and crazy things that we did over the years. And I asked myself, how do you summarize that? How do you describe your experiences with somebody? How do you describe the outlook? What was he really, really like? And all these stories you've heard so far today are very similar. And for me, when you boil it all down, he was an adventurer. He wanted to try everything. He wanted to do anything and everything. If you suggested, he was going to do it. Nothing could hold him back. And it was that desire to experience everything that made him so inspiring to his friends and his family. You know, we had simple adventures, camping with friends, camping with kids. We had bigger adventures, you know, fishing, hunting, you know, mountain hiking, desert hiking. We even did downhill mountain biking. He had no business doing that, but he did it anyways. He loved to travel. He loved to try foods. The more exotic, the better. As John mentioned, I gave him rooster balls, and he said, I'll try that. But not only did he want to try that, the first thing he said was, I'm going to share it with John. More recently, when he couldn't travel anymore, he continued to have his own adventures. He had food adventures at home from his own kitchen, and he loved to share that with his friends. I think, again, most of all, he really, truly enjoyed his life. I think he knew he was on a timeline, but he wasn't going to let that stop him. He shared that spirit and love of adventure with everyone that knew him. I think that I can honestly say I learned a lot about myself from Ray, directly, indirectly, from the way he behaved, from the way he took care of his family, from the way that he treated his friends. And I want to thank him for that. I will truly miss my friend. And as I just told him a few weeks ago, I'm so proud of him, and his spirit will continue in all of us.
Hi, it's Terry again. It's actually quite heartening to hear that Ray and all the phases of his life, his friends from high school and his colleagues, that it was the same Ray and that he had a similar impact on all of us. I wanted to echo what was said before. It seems like a common thread here, but how Ray attacked his diagnosis was extraordinary. Like as a physician, you see the whole spectrum of how people approach cancer, and Ray was exceptional in how he handled it. So when I first met Ray, you've heard about all his eccentricities. It was the same for me. My first impression of him was that he was eccentric and bold, and almost like, for me, it was almost like he was a caricature. I didn't know if he was real. He was so unlike anybody that I'd ever met before, and very foreign to me. I don't know if it was an East Coast, West Coast thing, but he had slightly longer hair. He had his leather jacket, and he was like kind of a K-popper before his time. But I was just I was astounded by how fearless and driven he was. I was intimidated actually by his study habits. You've heard about some of them, but he could go 10 to 16 hours straight in the library, and he would be sitting there. I'd be sitting there next to him watching him. He'd have his powdered caffeine next to him, and he'd be taking notes, and he'd use 3 different colors of pen because he was convinced that if you use 3 different colors of pen, it imprints neurologically better. And I believe it worked because he was amazing. But those extreme study habits, his intellect, his boldness, his brashness, that was Ray. He would try anything, he would say anything, I initially thought, because he was so academically inclined, that he was like a lot of people we know as like that, where we were driven towards grades and for school. But Ray was different. He learned and studied to be better. Like, he didn't just like to collect watches. He learned how to build them. We were talking about cooking. He would learn the origins and sources of all the ingredients. He would really want to know how things worked, and I really admired him for that. If we wanted to know a random fact about something, we would just ask Ray, and almost always he would know it. He had this incredible energy, and it wasn't just the caffeine. He really just had this persistent energy and drive. And as we got older, our group of friends from medical school, we all grew together, our families grew together, and all that energy and dedication that we'd seen for school and academics and his profession went into his family. And his family was everything to him. And it's no wonder with parents like Ray and Peggy that his kids have turned out to be such wonderful people. I think as we got older, we realized that our priorities and our pride were in our families. It was just a couple months ago, I met up with Ray. He was in the area of my work. These stories kind of correlate with each other, but he was shopping for, I think, unusual meat. It was like called wild meat or something. He was going to a supermarket there for some unusual game that he was going to try to cook. But we met up for lunch, and we were sitting around like a couple old men. We were just, I think it was our age and our circumstance, but we were just reflecting on our lives, everything that we'd done, and really we were thankful about and so fortunate about the things that we'd done in our lives. And we talked about how full our lives were with our family, our travels, the things that we'd experienced. If you were to try to write a book on Ray, it would be volumes because of everything that he's done and experienced. It would be like the adventures of Ray. And I feel very fortunate that I was able to be part of some of those adventures with him. And when we were talking there, he was talking about his family, the things he loved to do, going to Girl Scouts with Ella, learning about the rules of baseball and water polo, because he didn't know it before, but with Evan, with watching Katie run, he loved to do those things. And one thing that struck me is when we were talking there, he would talk about how Katie would call him for everything. So stress from school, from college, dating, boys, she would call him for everything. And that's the most pride that I've ever seen from Ray. It really is. I think we realize that, our true pride is our children's trust and respect and love, and he felt that. And I think that is going to be kind of his legacy, is his family. So, thank you.
Those are really hard to follow, those amazing stories of Ray. They're really so rich in content. They're so rich in content and color. Thank you for sharing all those wonderful stories and helping us remember the experiences with my good buddy, good lifelong friend. I'm struck by all the common themes and words we've used. Meticulous, I heard. He was fucking anal. You know, to be honest, I really struggled to collect my thoughts. Partially because I refuse to admit that he's gone. Partially because I wanted to subdue all the emotions, the torrent of emotions that I know that will rush through. Partially because I knew it would be hard to come up with the right words, the right stories that would paint the picture of his rich and amazing life. I wanted to express my anger, frustration, sadness about how long and hard of a struggle my good buddy had to endure with this cursed disease. How unfair to have such a good man have his life cut short. But Ray wouldn't have wanted that. In all the years he lived with the cancer, he did exactly that. He lived. He, being Ray, chose not to let this debilitating disease define him. He didn't let it keep him down. He asked me not to talk about or dwell on the cancer because he knew that is what people would feel a need to discuss. He knew what it was, what to do. He was selfless in that way. He was brave and courageous in that way. He wanted to talk about life, not about dying. He wanted to talk about his amazing kids. He was so proud of each and every one of them. And Ray and Peggy have done an amazing job raising these accomplished, smart, caring, thoughtful kids. Not just academic achievers, but they instilled a sense of humanity, a real joy to be with. He wanted to talk about his beautiful wife, who we all know is a machine, running the household, planning, executing all things. He wanted to talk about his travels, his adventures, his culinary feats, his right-leaning politics, the latest controversy, his watch collection, his gun collection, fishing, hiking up Mount Baldy, his gardening, his hydroponics. He wanted to talk about life. So I'm so happy that we are celebrating his life. As everyone had said before, Ray was a tenacious and often stubborn guy. He was a fighter. He had the courage and determination to face hardship in life, and he did it with grace. All the words that we've heard before. He was considerate, caring, a true friend. I don't have many close friends, and terrible at keeping in touch with friends and sort of this frenetic pace of life. But you can always count on Ray to be able to pick up right where you left off with ease. I too met Ray in the 8th grade in that New York City Science Fair contest. And yes, we were nerds, as nerds rule. Brandon found him as he was scoping out the competition, but instead of figuring out how to top the competition, he was excited to find a kindred spirit. Vinny, this guy loves the military. He loves guns. It was love. He had us at hello. I read Sun Tzu. I read Clausewitz. And he had us there. He never grew out of his interest in guns. Right away, we all shared a love of learning, discovering new things, figuring out how things work, asking questions. Ray's intellectual curiosity knew no bounds. Our family trips is a testament to that. My kids would always ask tough questions, and I would always defer to Uncle Ray. He had the talent to distill complex subjects in a way that a child can understand. Ray was a role model in that way. The patience he had finding the key teaching moments and making things educational, imparting all the interesting things he'd learned over his life. I attribute the inquisitiveness of my kids in part to Uncle Ray, a gift that they would cherish. My kids' first microscope came from Ray. Their love of puzzles came from Ray. My kids' knowledge of harems, concubines, and concerts came from Ray on a trip we took to Turkey, where Julie and I my wife and I tried to shield our kids from those questions. In one of the most significant areas of Topkapi Palace, for fear that a 7 or 10-year-old would just not understand. But Uncle Ray explained it with such ease and discretion. My wife elbowed me to take mental note. I'm so lucky to have shared those travel experiences with Ray and his family. My kids would cherish the meals, the tours in Portugal and Greece, their imprinted first amusement park ride that's now permanently ingrained in them, the Tower of Terror. His sense of adventure, love of travel, learning new cultures, and trying new foods was insatiable. Again, my kids' adventurous palate, I think, is owed in part because of Ray. Recently at a French restaurant, we took our kids. They ate frog legs, calf brains, sweetbreads, and their test of whether or not to eat it was, would Uncle Ray try this? I've been impressed by Ray's culinary feats at home, making his own bacon, making emu, ostriches, steaks, Kobe Wagyu steaks, tomahawk steaks, wild boar, countless culinary adventures. We were true nerds, and really, he sought the answer. He tried to find the answer on how things worked all around him. There made mention in the pamphlet about fireworks. It goes beyond that. When we figured out in chemistry class the periodic table of elements, we ended up procuring sodium, and we went nuts, dropping it anywhere we could where there was water, including toilet bowls. When we took physics classes and we realized we're doing this all wrong, guys. We can actually build our own timers. Things that Brandon had mentioned would put us in juvie, and brand us as terrorists in high school. We did those things not because we were bad kids, but we were curious kids, and we learned to sort of apply all the things we learned. We learned, we were curious, and I'm so grateful that my kids got life lessons in our trips. I think we're truly blessed to have known Ray, cherished the experiences and time with him, the gifts of wisdom, adventure, compassion that live on with me, my family, and his family and friends. He'll be missed, but never forgotten. Thanks.
My name is Ella Chang, the second daughter of Ray Chang, and I thank everyone for coming to remember the brilliant life my dad lived. I'm here to recall my memories and hope that from the small moments I recall, everyone can understand not the person who was your friend or relative, but the person I saw as my dad. The earliest memory I have with him was when I saw him shaving and I wanted to do the same thing he was doing. He put shaving cream on my face and as well as him, and he took turns using the razor on his face and then the backside for me as we both laughed together. Later, I started softball, and my dad, whenever he found free time, would throw a ball with me until it was time to eat. He was so involved in our lives and would learn new things so we can experience it together. I went through a YouTube phase, and my dad bought me a $10 microphone just so I can start it. He wanted to support me. And then later, when he found out there was a 50-mile bike ride for Scouts, and he did it with Evan, he said that one day we would do it together. And then he used to teach me how to shoot the BB gun in the backyard and take my brother out to the rifle range. And every day, he was there for every first day of school I had. After retiring, my dad watched an endless amount of cooking videos and became an excellent chef. We joined in his cooking adventures, making sausages, ribs, and smoked salmon. He was always trying new things, and not one moment of his life was wasted. Whatever he put his mind to, he excelled at. And he would spend hours trying to beat the game, or gardening, or cooking with his new grill. My dad's a superhero and a role model. I was there for every obsession he had, like Top Gun, and buying like an Indiana Jones hat and a leather jacket for the movie premiere. And when he was playing a medieval game, and he bought a whole armor head and a mace where we used to crack a coconut. I have fond memories of our family going fishing, and I'm convinced it's one of my dad's favorite pastimes. He would take my brother and I to the lake in the early mornings, and we would just fish. He bought me my first rod, which was like a little Elsa one. His profile pictures, like one day he came to us and he showed our family the profile pictures he had for each of us, and it was us holding a fish we caught. In the last few weeks, I woke up early in the morning with my dad to go to the nearest lake, and we just fished. We didn't catch anything, but we had fun. And on our way back to the car, we saw a giant carp splash in the lake, and he said, "We'll go fish for it tomorrow." The most recent memory I'll cherish was after a swim meet. I texted my assignment after winning a heat, and he told me he was proud of me and asked if I reached my goals that I made earlier. I said no, and all he told me was to set new goals and that he was proud of me that I made progress. Ray Chang was an amazing dad to Kian, Seven, and I, and I'm grateful that he was there for us, and I love him so much.
Hello, family and friends. My name is Evan, and I'm the son of Ray Chang. And I would like to first start off by thanking everyone for joining us in remembering the incredible life of my father. I cannot truly express how grateful I and my entire family are for everyone's support. To everyone who is here and has reached out to my family in expressing their condolences, thank you so much for your support through these times. Hearing my dad's stories growing up, I've always realized that we shared 3 remarkably similar interests around the same period of us growing up, or as my dad and I used to call it, the 3 Gs: grades, guitar, and of course, girls. But I never realized until now that those 3 Gs were all valuable life lessons my dad was passing down to me. I never saw my dad as the studious type in my first few years. In fact, one of my first memories was me sitting in his lap, him playing Borderlands on his PS3 as baby Evan cheered him on with his incessant crying. But as I grew alongside him, I could not be farther from the truth. As I worked through up until my high school years, my dad would always be there alongside me, working through math problems, explaining how the world worked to me. I'd always envisioned the day he would be helping me on a physics or chemistry problem in high school. But what I got was so much more. Whenever I came home complaining about my teachers, how they didn't grade, how their grading curve was so unrealistic, he would always respond, "Learning is up to yourself." Every weekday, while we would play Jeopardy at 7 p.m. on the dot, my dad would pause the TV right before Alex Trebek answered, followed by him sharing his answer and explanation to a clueless and often impatient family. After school, he would play baseball with me in our cul-de-sac, pressing through the pain inside his own body. His curiosity was second to none. Every hobby picked up, from photography, puzzles, fishing, gardening, would be thoroughly picked down to the bone, experienced for all it had to offer. He never wasted a single day of his life without learning. But time is an interesting thing, though. I used to do this little thought experiment with my dad. So I had 16 years with my dad, but if you subdivide that even further, I had 6,018 days with him. Even further, a little under 9 million minutes. But if you keep dividing that period of time up, you'll find that I had an infinite amount of time, of infinitely small increments of time with him. But even with my own infinity, with my own father, I'm still never able to appreciate just how much I learned from him. One day, during swim practice, the Pina Colada song was blaring out of my coach's speaker, and I began singing along with the lyrics. My coach was surprised, as both me and my older sister Cadence, who had been on the swim team 4 years prior, knew the lyrics like the back of our hands. I simply explained, "My dad loves this type of music." And indeed, my dad had always expressed his interest in old school rock. I'd never seen my dad so proud as when I first picked up a cherry red Stratocaster Fender guitar he had got to me for Christmas. With the sparkle in my eyes and the biggest smile on my face, he could not resist bringing every visitor to the house to my playing area, telling me to play his favorite rock song, Stairway to Heaven, while eagerly recording me as I nervously plucked out the tune. But his dedication to all of my hobbies did not stop there. Growing up playing baseball, there wasn't a single weekend he wouldn't drag me out to the batting cages at Line Drive or at Ayala Park just to watch me play. I still fondly remember every single time he would pry me out of bed at 5 a.m. to go fishing with him, father and son, on a local lake, reliving his glory days of catching barracuda and almost being eaten by an alligator. I beamed proudly when my water polo coach announced at our banquet that my dad was the official photographer of our team. He was biking right beside me during a 50-mile bike ride for a cycling merit badge in Boy Scouts. Whatever I pursued, my dad was right there supporting any path I decided to take. And ever since the day he passed, there hasn't been a single day in which I would have given anything to spend another day with him. But yet, I still always remember what he said to me before his passing. "Whatever you do, wherever you go, I'll always be part of you, literally 50% part of you." So whenever I feel lonely or feel accomplished, or quite frankly, whenever I feel like it, I hug myself and think to myself, "I love you, Dad." My dad was always quite the ladies' man, as you've heard from the countless number of stories. But now I've understood that his advice to me was not about relationships, but rather on how to be a man. He was always the best role model, caring after my mother and my siblings, no matter how tired he was from his work. I could always count on a, "How was school? Did you talk to any girls?" every single day I returned from school. His honesty, loyalty to our family, and chivalry was exemplified through his entire life. His smile was contagious unlike any other, and his dad jokes never failed to elicit either a small chuckle from me or a sarcastic eye roll from my mom. His love for everyone around him is evident to all those who reached out to her family, expressing their sorrow and illustrating the impact my dad had on their lives. Ever since my father passed, I would always worry that I would forget the cherished memories that I shared with him, being unable to tell my children, his grandchildren, about all the adventures we had together. But now, I stand here knowing that I can never forget my dad, as he made me into the person that is here today. He will never be forgotten for all of his accomplishments, from being New York City wrestling champion, to practicing head and neck surgeon, to countless number of science fair victories, being an alumni of Cornell University, and the ones he would be most proud of, being a father, husband, and friend to many. The crack of dawn, his loved ones by his side, and golden rays of sunshine beaming down on his face were exactly as he wanted in his final moments. Thank you so much for joining me today and remembering my dad.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to be here today with us to celebrate my dad's incredible life. My name is Cadence, and I am his eldest daughter. I think I had a slideshow, but okay. Yeah, so I'll just be like raising my hand to change the slide. So yeah, just ignore that. All right. My dad led an extraordinary life. For every second of his 49 years, he always gave 110% to everything he did, just as he encouraged us to do. As a father, son, brother, and friend, my dad left a lasting impact on all that knew him. That's why I always loved looking at old pictures of my dad before he became my dad. Old photos became a glimpse into the past of who my dad was in his younger days. Even back then, Dad loved science. One picture shows him working in a lab, smiling at the photographer. His love for science didn't end once he graduated college, but instead grew as he pursued medical school and began practicing. I assume that he was also a great singer and dancer, as I look at memories of him singing into a mic wearing a red lei and playing Dance Dance Revolution. He loved to work out, but he loved flexing even more. He was popular and loved his friends and family dearly. Many of you knew my dad before he became a parent. Many of you also knew him as a physician who dedicated so many years of his life to helping others. Now I want to share my memories of him as I knew him as my father. My dad simply loved life, and he wanted to share as much of it as possible with his family. He would call us to the dinner table and explain to us the different parts of the body from his old medical school textbooks, insisting we take them back upstairs to give them a quick read. Even as his cancer caused painful side effects, he took it as an opportunity to explain the process of stent removals or the causes of edema. He picked up so many different hobbies that ranged from the ordinary to the more unusual, as evidenced by his lengthy profile on Facebook. He developed an interest in photography after he caught a glimpse of a resident owl in our backyard, later winning an award from the city for his picture. My siblings and I learned how to shoot a BB gun after he began hunting down the ground squirrels that terrorized his beloved garden. He started fixing up broken cuckoo clocks to display around the house, the ticking leaving a legacy in our living room. He had a long-standing passion for cooking and loved to cook anything from emu to baklava. When I was in college, he sent me this picture of him dressed as Indiana Jones, complete with the original leather jacket pattern and leather cowboy boots. I thought that was strange, but can you imagine my surprise when he sent me this picture? Wearing a medieval helmet and brandishing a mace? He never wasted a minute of his life, finding something worth learning in everything. Beyond sharing his passion for life with us, my dad constantly showed so much support for my mom, siblings, and me in all of our interests and our endeavors. If we liked something, he tried and began to love it. When my mom went back to school, my dad would drop my siblings and me off at school. Then, after coming back from a long day at work, he'd shuttle us to our respective activities and end the day cooking his famous steak for dinner. He rallied for Evan as he began to play the guitar and introduced my brother to the world of heavy metal and old school rock. When Evan was training for his 50-mile bike ride scout badge, my dad biked alongside him for weeks and up until the very end. My dad was immensely proud of Ella when she began to play the ukulele, always encouraging her to play and love music as much as he did. When she also experienced an interest in cooking, my dad went above and beyond to share with her new cooking techniques and recipes. When I was struggling in school, he would patiently sit with me and explain all he knew about physics and chemistry, from two-dimensional motion to ions. He attended many of my swim meets, cross-country races, and even made the effort to come down to San Diego despite feeling unwell to support me during one of my first triathlons. No matter what, my dad showed us his unconditional love and support with more than just words. There's one memory of my dad that really stuck out to me, as it just encapsulated his extraordinary tenacity in life. In May of 2019, my dad took Evan and I to hike up Mount Baldy. Even with the short ski lift, the hike was almost 2,500 feet of elevation gain. Just a few weeks earlier, he had attempted the climb with his friends, but had to turn back earlier from the exhaustion. At this point in his life, he was still undergoing chemotherapy and dealing with many side effects, and yet he made it his mission to complete the hike with us. The hike was very difficult, and it took us literally all day. When we reached the summit, Evan and I were exhausted, but so excited to be done. My dad followed shortly after, and when he reached the peak, he just sat down and cried. This hike always reminds me of the sheer grit my dad showed in all aspects of his life, and he continuously inspires me to this day. It still doesn't feel real. I think reality sets in when I begin to notice the small differences that arise from his absence. I'll miss when he greets me, "Katie," when I come home from winter break, and his persistent weekly FaceTimes while I'm at school. I'll miss when he calls me down to make kimchi or to proudly demonstrate his newest cooking gadget. I already missed running downstairs and seeing him on the couch with his iPad propped against his crossed legs, posting on Facebook, writing a review on Yelp, or reading a Wikipedia page. He won't call us down for Jeopardy time and share his vast amount of knowledge in every category. He won't be able to give me lessons on how the centrifugal force isn't actually a force, or take me to boot barns to explain the subtle differences between every single work boot. He won't be there to remind me that water damages wood, or how microsplatters are the enemy of all. While my dad has only known me for half of his years, he has been there for my entire life. He is such an integral part of who I am that even though he is gone, everything has and will always have a memory of him associated with it. My dad truly led such an interesting and inspirational life. He had immense love for his family, had an enormous amount of knowledge about the world, and showcased unwavering determination in the face of life's unfair challenges. There are so many memories of him I wish I could share and hold on to. I am so fortunate that Dad was my dad, and I hope we can all remember who he was even after his passing. I love you, Dad. Thank you.
I just wanted to thank everybody for being here today, whether you're here in person or in thought. I appreciate you being here for us, whether you knew Ray well in all his life, or you knew him in passing, or you didn't know him at all, and you're here to support our family. And I appreciate everything that everyone has done to reach out in the past 2 weeks since Ray passed. All your gestures, whether they were text or calls or coming with me to make arrangements, offering your help, forcing me to accept help, even when I said I didn't need it. It's appreciated and more than you will ever know. And I feel, it almost seems like all of our speeches, like we collaborated on it, because all these stories are so consistent of who Ray was. And I almost feel like at times I would make fun of him, and I would say, like, are you an NPC? Because he was so predictable in everything that he did. He would, say the same things all the time, and it was comforting in a way to know that everybody has very similar stories of him, because then I know my memories of him, even in these past 2 weeks, are real, and that I'll remember him for who he was and continue to remember him. I think, hearing all his friends speak of him, it's just, there's a familiarity to what you said, and sorry. No, I don't know what I can really say about Ray that hasn't already been said, and I think to truly appreciate who he was is to understand his life in context. He was born the middle of 3 children. Dawn, his older sister, represented the break of day. Ray was named after the rays of the sun. And as for Owen, his younger brother, I'm actually not sure where that came from. But his parents had both immigrated from Taiwan to earn their PhDs in chemistry. But his father's real passion was business, so he ran a company that manufactured and produced brushes that you would use in a laboratory. The business was modest, and it became a family business in that Ray's mom ran the logistics, while Ray would recall many summers packing boxes by hand and typing out business letters for his dad. Ray was very close to his mom, who he always described as kind, and he would tell stories of the two of them just sitting at the kitchen table laughing together at nothing. He would say that she would start laughing, and he would start laughing, and they would be laughing together. And Ray, unfortunately, his mom passed, predeceased him, and I know Ray was brokenhearted that because of COVID, he could not be there with her. He grew up in a co-op located at the end of the Brooklyn Bridge, and one of his favorite memories of her was walking over that bridge to Chinatown in Manhattan to buy groceries and pot stickers with his mom. And to this day, whenever I asked what he wanted to eat, one of his main answers would always be pot stickers. And as you probably already read in the program, and from what his childhood friends have said, his playground was the streets of New York, and I will never, ever tire of hearing his friends share stories of growing up. I could just imagine little Ray, nerd, with thick Coke bottle glasses running through the streets, riding the subway, facing down muggers, and, just pursuing their curiosity with the freedom of being kids in the 80s. And I just love hearing about how they lit rockets and how he got whacked with a bat. And it's just funny. It's on the side, when we would just be talking about his cancer, I remember him mentioning, like, maybe I got it because that man in the woods, like, hit me on the back with the bat, and, he said it just to be funny, but, I just remember that story so well because of that. And as you guys had mentioned, he was very into camouflage. I remember he used to tell me that he would drag his mom to Macy's, and he would be sorely disappointed that they did not carry, like, the military fatigues that he was looking for. And by the time he graduated high school, he knew that he did not want to follow his father in the business, and so he pursued his master's in chemical engineering, and then he decided that he would complete a year of research before entering medical school. At that time, his maternal grandmother needed care, so his uncle arranged for Ray to stay at her place and care for her. And Ray would remember taking his grandmother frequently to the hospital in between his studies, and he would always recall his grandmother as a kind and funny person. I like to think that perhaps those were the formative years of his childhood that brought out one of the most frequent words that I've heard so many people describe him as, kind. You know, he definitely had an incredible work ethic. He was smart. He was curious. He pursued his interests, and he would talk to anybody. Wherever we were, he would talk to anybody. I think, like Vincent said, you know, I was very upset and distraught when Ray was diagnosed with cancer. I think it was how Ray faced this biggest challenge of his life that ultimately shaped and defined his extraordinary character. Not many people know, as you've mentioned before, because he was very private about his health, but he was only 37 when he was diagnosed with pancreatic neuroendocrine cancer. And at the time, it was already categorized as stage 3. And he had just begun to live what many consider the prime of somebody's life. He had just started his career after 10 years of intense training. And I remember feeling so much anger for him that life had handed him this cruel twist of fate, this rare cancer that, even though I knew this was an immature thing to ask, is to ask why it had to happen to him. And he always had an answer, and it was always that if this could happen to anybody. And it was the same cancer that took Steve Jobs' life. And he would always say, if it could affect somebody like Steve Jobs, there's no reason why it wouldn't affect me. And he was always very practical. And as I think Eric had mentioned, you know, he never ruminated over these things. He never felt sorry for himself. He never despaired. I rarely saw him cry, if ever, because he was selfless. And he, from the beginning, when he was diagnosed, his first thought was to take care of us. I don't think a lot of people knew what he went through with his cancer. By 2018, he had already had part of his pancreas resected, his liver resected, his gallbladder, his spleen were all resected, and you would never know just looking at him. And he continued to work, like everybody said. He continued to work for 10 years. And, you know, and now the hours of a surgeon is not easy. And he would just go to work, and he would never complain. And he would come home, and he would just ask, he would call, and he would ask, what do you need? What do you need me to do? Do you need to pick up groceries? Do you need to pick up the kids? Because first and foremost, when he left work, he was a dad and a good husband. And that was his priority. I remember I would ask him, like, what are you like at work, you know? Because he never talked about his work. He'd occasionally bring home an X-ray, an interesting X-ray to show the kids. Like, I remember he brought home this X-ray of a toothbrush that was fully jammed into somebody's throat. And of course, he was HIPAA compliant, but he was showing the kids. And I just remember that was Ray. He just loved learning. He found things so interesting, and he always wanted to share it with the kids. And I think as everyone has said, you know, despite this immense pain that he experienced, his goal was to keep life normal as much as possible for us and himself. He pressed forward. I remember that his friends had invited him out to go mountain biking, and he was not at his strongest state. And I remember not 20 minutes after he told me he had arrived, I get another call, and he had completely ate it. He had cracked his rib and broken his phone, but he couldn't have been happier. And I was just so grateful, and I'll always forever be grateful that his friends always treated him like he was normal and never made him feel like he was different or that he needed special treatment, that they were always there to treat him just like the rest of the guys. I remember that as a father, he would always insist on us eating dinner as a family. And that meant that sometimes we would be eating dinner at 9:30 at night. And he would cook these amazing dishes for us, and they started out pretty normal, pasta, homemade pasta, and then it gradually got weirder and weirder. I remember he would go out and he would buy odd meats. He would buy like camel or emu. I think Vincent sent him a few packages of the meat, and I was like, and I remember he was so excited, and our freezer was completely full of the meat, and he was like, what do you want for dinner tonight? Emu or ostrich or camel? And I was like, trying to be grateful, but I was like, in my mind, I was like, thanks, Vince. Like, I would have appreciated something more normal, but that's what Ray did. He would look up recipes and he would be able to cook them for us. And that was the way he showed us that he loved us and cared about us. And I think John mentioned this. I feel like I'm repeating everybody's speech, but Ray had this habit of adding the prefix micro to everything. Micro splatters, micro scratches, micro drips, micro particles of dust. He would warn us of these dangers of these micro assaults, which would lead to death and destruction if we didn't attend to them. I still hear him saying in my head, nothing over the gap, referring to the gap between the kitchen countertop and the stove, for which he monitored with a hawk eye lest any microparticles fell in. He never felt so justified and vindicated when a repair person came to fix our stove one day, and upon pulling it out from the wall, remarked, "This has got to be the cleanest area underneath the stove that I've ever seen." I've never seen Ray beam so widely. He was so proud of himself. And though it was annoying as hell to be reminded of the micros and to be micromanaged, I can tell you it's really sad. It's really hard to be sad about somebody when they are nagging you about these little micro splatters. I wanted to yell, Ray, look at the Ray, like look at the bigger picture, Ray. You're dying of cancer. Who cares about micro splatters? But I think it was finally when he was gone that I realized that Ray knew what was important all this time. It's not the bigger picture that you need to focus on, which sometimes you can't control, but that life is in the details. And that you can't always control what happens to you in life, but you can make these small changes in your life, that what you do have control over is what's important. And so I remember he would tell me when he came home from like hanging out with, Dan from work, he would be like, Dan wanted to bring a bottle of water into my Prius, and I said no, and I felt so bad for them, but that was Ray. Whether it was a Prius or his Tesla, whether he was performing surgery or wiping down the bathroom countertops, he took care of everything he had. He never took anything for granted, and he cultivated everything that came along in his path. And the same with his children. He nurtured, he cultivated them, and I think as you've heard all the stories, he spent every possible moment with them. If they had an interest, the next day something would arrive at Amazon, and he didn't have a lot of these experiences when he was growing up. And I think he took that to heart, and he wanted to make sure that his kids had a different experience. And so if he knew they were interested in anything, he would run to the library immediately and check out books. He didn't believe in buying books, so he would spend all this time searching out the books, waiting for them to be delivered. And as soon as he got the notice they were delivered, he'd go out and buy get the library books for them. I know a lot of people have come up to me and given me credit for caring for him, but the truth is I didn't do anything more than anyone would. Ray, to the very end, with all the suffering that he endured, took care of himself. He never wanted to worry me. He would drive himself to chemotherapy appointments if I couldn't come with him. He would encourage me to keep the kids on their schedule. And even when he was vomiting uncontrollably, he wouldn't tell me. I remember during a visit to the ER, they would ask what your pain level is and what would you like it to be controlled to. And I remember he told them, it's a 9 out of a scale of 10. And when they asked what he wanted it to be, he said 8. And I said, why don't you just say 4 or 5? Because on those charts of the pain levels, you see these faces, and they're grimacing, and they're making all these expressions. But Ray would always say, you know, an 8 is tolerable. And he never complained about his pain. He never lashed out in anger with his pain. I remember he would always just say, you know, my stomach feels funny, or, you know, this feels funny. And that was his way of telling me that he was in pain. We spent so much time in the hospital, and I just want to say how much I appreciated the doctors at Kaiser and the nurses at Kaiser who took care of him. I know it was hard for him to be on the other side of the bed, but you know, and he wanted to get out there as much as possible, but everyone treated him with compassion. And I just wanted to say that I appreciated that. In the days before he passed away, I tried to tell him all the things that I wanted to say. And I remember him saying, like, I'm not too good with expressing emotions, but I could tell that he tried so hard to be here with us. I remember he still wanted to go on our nightly walks. I remember he still wanted to come with me to the supermarket. And he just wanted to be with his family. He was selfless. This cancer was never about him, and he always encouraged us to lead and pursue our own lives. So in the days that followed his death, it always felt normal because he had given us the tools to keep moving forward in his own way. We could hear his voice reminding us to water his plants, to not let them die. And his love was in the details. I can realize now that, you know, that he showed his love in all the details, that it was all in the detail. He would tell us to put on our sunscreen. We would be walking, and he would suddenly slap a hat on us or slather us with sunscreen when we were least expecting it. Or he would do things like wipe up the hair from the bathroom or hang a towel over the shower so I wouldn't be cold when I got out. And it was all these little details that let us know that he cared, that he loved us. And one of the things I always admired about him was that he would call his parents weekly. You know, it didn't matter if they didn't have anything to say or that his father couldn't hear him because he didn't use his hearing aids. He would call them every week to make sure that they were okay. And that was Ray. He was loyal, and he was strong, and he was determined. And I will forever be grateful to know him. I remember he used to ask me, you know, if I knew what was coming, would I have married? And I said, how can you ask something like that? Of course I would, because he made our lives so much better. He inspired us so much in the life that he lived. He never complained or asked why. He just chose to live his life the way he did, loving us, inspiring us. A friend gave me a book on grief shortly after Ray passed away, and I didn't know if I could learn anything from it because I felt like I had been grieving for so long already. But there was a line in there that struck me, and it was that grief is just love with no place to go. And it made me understand why love and grief are strangely related. It's a dichotomy of realizing that, you know, things will never be the same, and sometimes things can feel normal, or that you want to remember everything about a person, but you also want to forget everything. And that sometimes I can hear his voice talking to us, and sometimes the house just seems too silent. And so I wanted to tell my kids, Cadence and Evan and Ella, that grief is a long process and that it's okay to cry and to miss your dad, no matter how old you are, and that we are going to miss him and want him to be there with us during the highest and lowest points of our lives. That it's okay to cry and feel that pain, but it's also okay to laugh and be happy without feeling guilty, because that is what Dad would want. I remember, I think, Julie, you said that you asked how the kids were doing, and I said, I think they're doing pretty well. And you had responded, I think it's because Ray was so optimistic, and he gave them the strength to keep going. And it made me realize, you know, in all my tendencies to be negative, my tendency to wonder why this had to happen to him, all this time, he just maintained this optimism and happiness. And I think that really is why the kids were able to do relatively well in the days after he passed. You know, and I hope that I can take that inspiration from him and help. I know I cannot replace your dad, and I'll try my best to love you all, to love you enough for the both of us. And Ray, you're already missed so much. I just want to let you know that I will always love and miss you.
Well, family and friends, this does conclude our service at this time, and I'm going to ask everyone to stand up and for the pallbearers to come forward. And as a reminder, on the way out, the family has provided a box lunch for you to go. And if you could also please be courteous, we do have another service following this, so once you take your box, if you can go out to the courtyard area, that would be helpful for us to prepare for the next service. We're over just a little bit on time. If we can have the pallbearers come forward. The family will follow behind, and then everyone else can follow after that.